but I believe we're gonna have to get medieval on your buttocks.
Hey everyone, welcome, and today I'm gonna rant. And I'm gonna really rant. Because as many of the things that we have witnessed in the past couple of years, this one by Hasbro and Wizard of the Coast takes the cake. Obviously I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Let me say hello to the owlbear, to the elf, to the Ramorats. I believe that's what it's called. I've never really knew how to pronounce it. It's just a cool little monster to freak out your players. A griffin. Yes, I painted these. These are mine. Alright, what am I on about? Well, the new D&D Monster Manual came out. And we finally know all these changes they've been up to. Let me say, I am not happy. Now, of course, this doesn't come out for a few days, but early access has been granted for people who pay for it behind a paywall. Remember all those microtransactions we kept talking about, that Chris keep talking about? These are them. So, early access to content, we have discovered that in the Monsters Manual, they have gotten rid of several monsters. The Sweater character kin, I can never pronounce the name, they're evil gnomes. The Dugar, the Drow, the evil elves, and biggest one ever, the orcs. Now, you know, there's these terms, it's like, you know, I jokingly make, you know, you got hardcore D&D people and you got normies. You know, muggles, whatever you want to call them. Even muggles will know who the orcs are. Most of you have seen Lord of the Rings. There they are. That's the guys that the good guys are fighting. Now, in Lord of the Rings, orcs and goblins were kind of the same thing. They were interchangeable at times, so we won't get into too much of the definitions. But the point is that one of the biggest bad guys in fantasy anything was erased. I mean, millions of orcs were erased. Wizards of the Coast got more XP off of that than anything. I digress. The point being is that this really causes some problems. So in game mechanics, one thing is that orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, gnolls, they're all considered humanoids. What does a humanoid mean? Looks pretty human. Maybe has a dog's head. Maybe is bigger and green and can tear up a whole lot of stuff. An owlbear is not a humanoid. A griffin is not a humanoid. That is definitely not a humanoid. Humanoids, bipedal, and there's a lot of them. Now they changed races to species. Why? Sensitivity. Okay, fine. That's not a big deal. They got rid of the half species, the half orc and the half elf. Half elf was always a personal favorite of mine. Why? Not make people feel bad. Okay. I'm still not sure if they got rid of the tiefling and the Asmar though. That would seem pretty. I mean, those are kind of half races as well, so it's like, I don't know. That's a pretty big fundamental. But getting rid of the drow is huge because here you have, for those who don't know, this is guy's name is Dritz Doriorden. And I know I'm probably butchering his name, but I've butchered it for 20, 30 years. I can butcher it all I want. He is a drow elf. R.A. Salvatore pretty much made his career on telling this guy's story. He's a friend of Elminster, who think Gandalf. And basically he was born in one of the drow cities and went against his upbringing to ultimately become one of the greatest heroes of the Forgotten Realms. Here's the thing, they just got rid of his race. His whole character is about overcoming your birth. You're not born evil just because the race as a society might be evil. It's a pretty compelling story. It's a good story. I didn't read many of the Dungeons and Dragons books. Those were some that I did, and I really liked them. And I really liked this character. Now, of course, this D&D line died before they could do anybody else. I was really hoping for some other guys, but that never happened. I digress again. The point being is that they did do Dritz twice, which was a weird thing in and of itself, and I keep saying I'm going to do a video on this. But now, his race doesn't exist. His whole story doesn't exist. It doesn't make any sense. And, of course, orcs don't exist. How do you... They're orcs, man. The most basic evil race of any fantasy setting. If you've ever played Warhammer, you know what orcs are. If you've ever played World of Warcraft, you know what orcs are. If you just watch Lord of the Rings, you know what orcs are. Orcs are the bad guys. Now, this gets a little complicated because remember that distinction I said, humanoids? So, humanoids can fall into anything. There's these creatures called gnolls. They look like hyenas, but they're bipedal. They're technically humanoids. So, apparently, from what anyone can gather, and has Wizards of the Coast is being very tight-lipped on what exactly is happening here. But there are some scholars who try to argue that the invention of orcs was kind of shall we say, intolerance towards certain people. Now what certain people those are, I don't know. Orcs have grown to be such a varied, well, I want to say race, but I keep going back to species because that's what they're called now, species. They're such a varied species that it's kind of like hard to tell where you're talking about. You have to go back to Tolkien and the source, and I don't see it, but you know, somebody probably does. Either way, they become a staple. They become a pretty damn big deal. I mean, tons of fantasy movies have orcs, and tons of fantasy games are built on orcs. Orcs are what you're there to pummel. Now, do I think orcs are racially insensitive? No. I think they're just a creature that serves dark masters. I mean, let's just say it, dark masters, because usually there's a dark master commanding the orcs to kill all the heroes. And thus, the heroes fight. But, like I said, going back to gnolls, they are no longer humanoid. They're, what was it, fiend? I can't remember now. Anyway, it's really sucking the fun out of the game. And I mean, it's just a basic fundamental. Whenever you hit a corner when you were a DM in your campaign, you just throw a bunch of orcs at them. That always works. Getting a little boring? Let's have an orc fight. Boom. It's exciting again. Random encounter with a bunch of orcs for orc raiders. Always works. Goblins and hobgoblins were changed too. I've already forgotten what that was. I mean, it's just so stupid. And I think it's a damn shame, because Dungeons & Dragons doesn't need this. Dungeons & Dragons doesn't need to get rid of... You know, I mean, one of the things I always liked about Dungeons & Dragons is it was always expanding. You know, even when it contracted back down for 3rd edition, just to kind of streamline it, you could still expand it. But leaving out orcs just seems like, what? What the hell? Now, there are things getting out like... This new edition isn't selling so well. Yeah, they're trying to say it's sold well, but it's really not. Look at the wordings of the press releases and you'll understand what I mean. It's not looking good for Dungeons & Dragons. You gotta keep in mind, there have been times since Hasbro acquired this property that this has been the only money-making property in Hasbro. That's bad. A new edition of the most popular role-playing game ever. And you gotta think, role-playing games are a big market. Huge. I mean, there are multiple RPGs released all the time. But, as we found out, the number of Kickstarters related to Dungeons & Dragons has lowered. Now, that's not hard factual science, but it might say something. And, you know, personally, I always liked 2nd edition anyway. That was one of my favorites. But I haven't played D&D in a long time because it's become so watered down. And what's made this worse is they found a way to water it down more. How the hell do you get rid of orcs? It does not make sense. But then again, they fired all their creatives, so that could be why. Now, personally, I think it's lame to say all the monsters were based on racial stereotypes. But it's been said. And that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's... What? We're going to say that, okay, we can't have skeletons because people have had friends who have passed away and they might think to remind them of their dead friend. Really, we're going to... It just feels like that's where we're going with this game. And, you know, don't bring in a necromancer. Oh, no. This is insensitive to insectoid bug-like creatures that are blue. You know, I mean... Lord. I'm kind of glad I'm out of it, but I'm seeing this unfold, and I'm thinking, my word, Hasbro's gonna fold, man. I mean, they might be able to figure this out and straighten things up, but you just killed one of your biggest characters. Right there. You basically erased him from existence by getting rid of the drow. That's insane to me. And many other systems have drow, usually calling them dark elves, but yeah, that's what they are, man. I mean, it's insane to me. You know, the dwarf and the gnome, okay, yeah. I mean, hardly anybody ever used those. I mean, they popped up once in a while, but it's not very often. Really, the drow and the orcs were always the mainstays of bad guys. I mean, that was your army. That, and you occasionally had evil humans. You know, I mean, armies of evil humans. I mean, and probably what will happen next is you can't have an evil. I mean, I don't even know if they probably got rid of so many things. Like, you know, there used to be alignment where you're good, neutral or evil, lawful, chaotic, neutral. You know, they probably got rid of that because they thought, oh, you can't have evil. No, you can't. We're probably going to have to get rid of dragons because they're insensitive to lizards. You know, beholders are probably insensitive to people with eye problems. And, God, let me think of another one. Umber hulks are going to be too much for people who like to dig. Miners. There you go, miners. Yeah, they're going to be too much to. They're insensitive to miners. You know, and giants. They're insensitive to short people. That's, you know, short people can't handle being around giants. This is the ridiculousness of this is just like, oh my god, can't do an illusionist because that's lying. I can't. Yeah, in my mind, I'm having this image. If anybody ever watched the South Park Christmas special, the first one, when they took everything out of the Christmas show, and then it was like, you know, the Christmas show was basically the kids hopping around on a stage, turning in circles, and the music was going, happy, 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 just so happy. That's what I imagine. That's what a session of D&D is going to look like in a few years. I really do. I mean, oh, can't have thri-kreen because they're insensitive to grasshoppers. They're showing grasshoppers in a bad light. Can't have golems because golems are from, you know, that one story, and you know that's a real world religion. We can't have that. Gee, no wonder they were trying to character assassinate Gary Gygax a little while back. They're offended by a drow elf. They're offended by orcs. The inmates are running the asylum. Oh well, that's fine. I left the asylum a long time ago, but I'm still looking at it from a distance going, pretty soon, guys, you're going to be Waverly Hills. If you get that reference, good for you. If you don't, Sergeant Major Google is your friend. That will wrap up my little ranty bit about D&D removing orcs from play. That might be the title of this video. That's pretty good. Removing orcs from play. Stupid Hasbro. I need to find that and bring it back. That was always a good one. Thanks for watching. Take care. Like, subscribe, comment. I hope you guys are doing well.